right, the homework was page 7. Beginning on page 7. Do you have questions about this page? Page 7. This is on Moodle. No questions? Okay, page 8. You didn't catch anything. Okay. So do you want me to walk through everyone? Okay, yeah, so let's talk about this. Only describes one. So it should be in front of one. That is the best place. We mentioned that adverbs that modify the entire sentence can be anywhere. But if it only modifies one word, it should be next to that word. Now, you will hear a lot of native speakers put the only here, but technically speaking, that is not correct. You're not talking about only learning, you're talking about learning only one. Same thing for even. It's describing beginners, not the whole sentence, especially not the word do. So it should be next to the word beginners. The third one, let's see. The mat should extend from knees to armpits. Okay, so to form this posture, there is a hidden subject here. If it should be a person, right? If you or if I or if someone wants to form this posture, then the subject of the main sentence should therefore be the person. In the corrected version, it uses the imperative mood, 第十句. So the subject is you. You extend the mat from knees to armpits. So the subject should not be the mat. The subject should be a person. Now, usually we would put the range after the object, but here, this describes the mat. So it should come next to this word. It could be explained as a relative clause, which we have not yet covered, but you could also be explained as a participial construction. So you could say the mat being freshly laundered or having been freshly laundered. Or you could just even leave this blank. If it's being, last week we said if it's only the word being, that can be omitted. So the fastest correction is just to add a comma. Well, this should be the word mat. Mat, and then add this comma. And then you can just continue with the regular original sentence. The next one, again, the subject of this sentence has to be the same subject doing this. Participial construction. Who is bending the knee? The person is bending the knee. Therefore, the sentence cannot use the left ankle as your subject. It has to be a person. So once again, we're using imperative mood. You relax. You bend, you relax. Next one, the word almost. is describing the time. So it's not describing the motion of bending. So it should be next to the time. The next one, you know what? If you put the now in this place, I'll take it. But you should add a comma here to let the reader know that the now is describing this action. So you do need to add this comma right here. So now throw your head back, or throw your head back now, comma. Once again, the only is describing the number of times, not the action. It is not saying you should only breathe and you should only breathe a number of times. It's saying you should breathe only a number of times. Next one, the person doing the tucking should be the same subject as the main sentence. Once again, this is imperative mood. The subject is you. You tuck the chin, you wiggle the nose. And then finally, like, that is blue is describing the sky. But really, why don't you just say raise the arms to the blue sky? That seems to be the best answer, right? Raise the arms to the blue sky. Okay, other questions about this page? Okay, so that's the homework. This week, it's one of those weeks that are going to be very busy because we are on a Friday and we have lots of holidays on Fridays. So we're kind of compressing things. So this week we're doing three things: direct questions, negation, and direct quotations. And I'm not sure why I put that in that order, because direct questions are the hardest ones, and then direct quotations, and then negation is the easiest one. So I'm not sure why we're doing it this way, but that's the order. Let's begin. Direct questions. I'm sure most of you know this, but let's go over this just in case. There are four kinds of questions in English. First, you have, a regular yes/no question. Let's call it a typical yes/no question. So this one goes, let's take a regular sentence. Somebody give me a verb. Walk. All right. So she walked all the way up the stairs. So that's your regular sentence. This is a typical statement. To form a yes or no question, you take the first word in the main verb phrase, and you move that first word to the front. If your verb phrase only has one word, you have to add a new word to the verb phrase. So the first thing you do is you have to add a new word, did walk all the way up the stairs. And then you move so like we added the word do. And in English, the first verb carries the tense. So if you only have one verb, it's past tense. But if you have two words, the first word is past. The second word tells you the aspect. In this case, it's the simple aspect. Now we have two words. So then we can follow the rule. We move the first verb in the verb phrase to the front. Did she walk all the way up the stairs? Question. And that's your question. That's a typical yes or no question. So if your sentence has a lot of stuff in the verb phrase, So in this sentence, 3 words, right? Would have walked. Then it's easier. You just move the first word in the verb phrase to the front. Would he have walked up the mountain? Question. So far, so good? Any questions at this point? Okay, so these are yes or no questions. But sometimes you're asking a yes or no question to confirm. So if you're asking this kind of yes or no question, you don't know the answer. But sometimes you are asking a yes or no question and you already have a kind of idea, you probably know the answer, but you want to make sure. So for this kind of question, we add a question tag at the end. So let's take this one. This is the original statement. And to make it a question, you add a tag like right. If you say right, that means you think this is true. You want to make sure. Another tag that you can use is didn't she? If your tag has a verb and if your tag has a verb, negative implies confirmation, positive implies doubt. So here it's a negative, right? You have a not. But in fact, when you use the word not, this means you think it is true. English speakers are crazy, but this is how to do it. If you add a not, then you think this is true. So these two sentences are exactly the same. In both cases, you think it's true, you want to make sure. So to form this tag, we once again have to add another verb. But because you're not moving things in the original sentence, this is still past tense. You're just adding something new. And this comma tells you that you're adding something new. Remember, we mentioned a comma can often separate the main part of a sentence from extra information. So this comma tells you that the question tag is extra information. It does not change the original sentence. It just makes it a question. So same tense as this word, it's in the past. So your new verb also is in the past. If your sentence already has an auxiliary verb, like would, then you would repeat that word. Since you already have a would, you just use the would here. So all of these sentences suggest you think it's true, you just want to make sure. If your original sentence is already a negative, and you want to add a speech tag, we're going to talk about negative just a little later, but it looks like this. You didn't walk all the way up the stairs. If you want to confirm this statement, your speech tag also looks the opposite. If you have a negation here, then your confirmation speech tag must be positive. And then finally, the shortest kind of speech tag is you can simply use yes or no. She walked all the way up the stairs. No. No, in this case, means didn't she? So these are the things. Right? Here, you're just using this negation in a very short form. Finally, as a kind of joke, because like this is kind of confusing, right? If you want to confirm, you have to add a negation. Very weird. Some second language speakers, so non-native English speakers, will fuck this up, and instead of saying no, they will say yes. And this is technically not correct, but sometimes native speakers will do this as a kind of joke. So all of these first sentences mean the same thing. You think this sentence is true, you want to confirm, and so you add a question tag. If your sentence is a negation, you just flip all of these around, right? So if this is negated, this should be, well, hang on. Well, okay, so if this is negated, you can't use right. Right is only for positive sentences. But if this is negated, you can change this to did. If this is negated, you can change this to, well, I guess either one works, right? No and yes, same thing. But the more correct one would be the opposite. So didn't walk, yes, would be the most correct one. Okay, so those are question tags. Do you have questions about question tags? Okay, so now we're going to get into the slightly harder stuff. The third kind of question are the content questions. These are the who, what, when, where, why, how question, and which. Oh, and in fact, we already talked about this before, I think. If you remember the syntax trees, right? So we start with the deep structure. For example, yeah, let's start with this sentence. In this kind of structure, if you don't know the person, you can just replace it with who, right? Who walked, I'm not going to finish the sentence. Question. So if you're missing the subject, you can just replace the subject with it's either a person or a thing, right? So for example, if your thing is like the robot walked up the stairs, then your question would be, what walked up the stairs? Where am I? Yeah. So if you know it's a person, you use who. If you know it's not a person, you use what. But you can just replace the subject. But if your question begins, or sorry, if the part of the sentence you don't know is not at the beginning of the sentence, then you have to change the sentence order. So, for example, someone give me a noun. House. All right. So he bought a new house. If this is your sentence and you don't know this word, then the first step is, of course, to signal that this is what you don't know. He bought a new what? But in English, for questions, we usually have to move something to the front. So you would move the question part to the front. What bought a new house? But this then looks like you're asking if a robot bought a new house, right? This looks very much like this. But in fact, you don't want to ask it like this. So you need to add one more word here to tell the reader that oh, I know why. It should be the whole thing. He bought what? What he bought. Okay, yeah. So in order to separate these two nouns, you can't have two nouns in a row. You do have to add something here. So we add another verb. What did he buy? So again, if you have two verbs, the first verb tells you the tense. So if you only have one verb, it's in the past. If you have two verbs, the first one is in the past. The second one is the aspect, in this case, simple. So if your statement is he bought a new house and you're asking about this new house thing, then your question would be what? This is what you're asking about. Extra verb did, and then the rest of the sentence, but remember to change the verb so that it's no longer in past. The same goes for the other questions, right? If you're asking about a place, if you're asking about this part, the robot walked where, and then you have to move the question to the front, where, and then add a new verb, did, and then the rest of the sentence. The robot walked. Remember, the verb is no longer past because the past is here. So who and what, who's people, what is things, where is location. Then you also have when is time, how is there are two meanings here. It could be in what way or to what degree. So how intense. Let's do it this way. Method or intensity. So, for example, let's do how. Or one more. And then finally, which is options. You have a number of options in front of you. You have to pick one. That's which. Okay, let's do how. Let's say your original idea is it is very hot today. So here you can use how to ask about intensity. Very. This is your question. You don't know how hot. So your question would be, first of all, it is how hot today, and then you have to move the question word to the front. Oh, okay, I know what. You have to move your question word to the front. How, but also hot, because you're describing that. Is it today? And that is your intensity question. The very describes the hot, so both things have to move to the front. Okay, let's do one about method. She walked to school today. So, okay, wait. She went to school today on foot. So you're asking about this part, the method that she used to get to school. So first change that to a how. She went to school today, how? And then move the how to the front. And add that extra verb. Did she go to school today? That's your question. And then which, you have to have a number of options. So let's say there are 3 ice cream flavors. I want, well, it should be you. We're going to change this into a question. This should be you. You want that one. And so we are going to change, we're asking about your choice. So you want which one? Okay. And you have to move the question part to the front. So which one, and then add the verb do you want? And that's your options question. Okay, so those are the content questions. Questions? So far, okay? Okay, and then the last one is called the question of incredulity, which means you can't believe it. And in fact, we have already seen this. You just don't invert the sentence. You don't change the sentence order. And this tells the other person that you can't believe the answer to this question. So for example, if I say it's 40 degrees Celsius today, and the other person cannot believe it. It is how hot today? So in this kind of question, you simply replace what you're asking about with the question, but you don't change the sentence order. And this tells the person that you can't believe it because you're so shocked by this information that you forget to move the sentence order around. You can barely take in this fact. You don't have the mental energy to form a proper question. So let's also for this one, right? So there are 3 ice cream flavors. If A says, I want, somebody give me a disgusting ice cream flavor. I want the sour one. And B might reply with this sentence. You want which one? And if you want to emphasize how shocked you are, you can even leave in the. So in this case, you're only replacing the specific word that you're shocked by. Sometimes, in order to emphasize the shock, you will see the question being emphasized with italics, 斜体. You want which one, or you want the which one? Tells us you're so shocked you can't form a proper sentence. So these are questions of incredulity. Okay? Okay, so those are the 4 main kinds of English questions. And do you have any other questions or comments or thoughts about questions before we move on to the next thing? No, okay, so the next one is negation. Negation is slightly easier. Negation just means turning something from a yes into a no. English has 2 main forms of negation. So let's say your original sentence is you have to go to the wedding. The most common kind of negation, the oldest kind of negation, is to add a negative word after the main verb. So it would become you have not to go to the wedding. This is technically correct, but it is very old English. You will usually only see this kind of thing when you study Introduction to British Literature next year. In modern English, we move the negation to the front of the verb. And to tell the reader that you have moved things, you add the extra verb. You do not have to go to the wedding. So this is how we form negation in modern English. You put in the negation, you move it to the front, and then you add an extra verb to make it a complete sentence. Let's see. So there are two kind of special cases that you should remember. I said that this form of sentence structure is generally no longer accepted in modern English. There is one exception. If you use the word need. If you say you don't need to go to the wedding, this is the same as saying you need not go to the wedding. This is basically the only case in modern English that still makes sense. The second special case is if you have can. So if your negation is or sorry, if your main sentence is you can go to the wedding, but you want to negate this, okay. But you want to negate this, of course you can say you just add the word not after, because you already have two verbs. So you just add the word not in the middle. You can't go to the wedding. You don't need an extra verb. You already have the word can. Here's the special case. If you want to say cannot, you don't want to say can't, you want to say cannot. The word cannot in English is one word. This is the only case in English where auxiliary verb plus not is one word. Should not is two words. Need not is two words. Cannot is one word. Yes. So usually we use contractions when speaking or writing about somebody speaking. If we're doing something in a written context, the whole thing is like a report. Then you usually would not use contractions like can. Usually, this is the traditional rule. But that rule is slowly getting weaker. Today, only the most formal contexts you are not allowed to use contractions. But even for like ordinary reports, it's usually fine. But like if you're writing like a government report, then you have to write the whole word. Okay. Let's see if I'm forgetting. Okay, and then since we're talking about can't, right? If you are not a native speaker, especially if you are from Taiwan, you might have a problem saying these two words differently. Or like when you hear someone talk, you may have trouble distinguishing if this person is saying can or can't. Here's the key. In an affirmative positive sentence, the emphasis is on the main verb. The auxiliary verb is actually de-emphasized. But in a negated sentence, both words are emphasized. So the difference is actually not whether you can hear the T. Sometimes there's not even a T. I'll demonstrate later. The difference is in emphasis. So for the positive, you would say, you can go to the wedding. You can go. But for the negation, you would say, you can't go to the wedding. You can't go to the wedding. You can't go. You can go, you can't go. That's a big difference, right? I say sometimes you can't even hear the T. You can't go. Did I say a T? No, right? I just stopped. You can't go. So the difference is not with the T. The difference is in the emphasis. You can go, you can't go. Hopefully that will help you with your English listening and speaking. Okay, that's negation. Questions? All right, if you don't have questions, one last thing today is direct quotations. A direct quotation is you hear somebody say something and you repeat it exactly to somebody else. So a direct quotation usually has two parts. You have the quotation, which is the words that somebody said, and then you have a speech tag to tell the person you're communicating with who said this quotation. So I walked to school today. This is a quotation. Somebody said this exact sentence, these 5 words in this order, exactly. Only if it is exactly correct can you use quotation marks to create a direct quotation. But then you have to tell the person who said this. And that is the speech tag. So a few things to point out here. Originally, this was a period, but if it is the end of the quotation, but not the end of the whole sentence, that is, if your speech tag comes after that sentence, then a period changes into a comma. This is not true for question marks, exclamation points. I walked to school today, she said excitedly. Or I should say she shouted. She shouted. So this is not a period. You don't have to change it. You don't have to add a comma. Just add the speech tag after. Same for questions. Did you really walk to school today? I asked her. This is not a period. You don't have to change it. You don't have to add a comma. Just add the speech tag after. Okay, so with this speech tag, we are starting to see that in terms of grammar, the main part of the sentence is not the quotation. The main part of the sentence is the speech tag, right? Subject, verb, object. Subject, verb, subject, verb. The speech tag is the sentence. And if we take a comma to separate the main part of the sentence from extra information, then in fact, in terms of grammar, the quotation is the extra information. It doesn't matter what the person says, that does not change the grammar of the main sentence. So if you remember from the very first week, I kept emphasizing the meaning of a sentence and the grammar of a sentence may not be related. This is a good example. When we hear or we report a direct quotation, we care about the quotation. But in fact, in terms of grammar, the speech tag is the main part of the sentence. The quotation is extra information. Okay, So once we understand this key fact, we can have some fun with quotations. Usually the speech tags come at the end, but it doesn't have to, because that's not the main part of the sentence. The quotation is not the main part of the sentence. So in fact, you can put the speech tag basically anywhere. At the beginning, in the middle, somewhere else in the middle, all three of these sentences mean the same thing. They have the same meaning. Because as long as you keep the main sentence together, you can have a lot of fun with the extra information. So same thing here, right? The main sentence is I asked her. As long as you keep this together, you can put this basically anywhere. Now, I said basically, but you do have to remember the syntax tree, right? So I is the subject, walk is the main verb. Then you have location, to school, and then time, today. You have to keep each one of these together. So you can put the she said here between subject and verb. You can put it here between verb and location. And you can put it here between location and time, but you cannot put it here because this is the middle of that phrase of location. One more thing to say here. If your main sentence comes in the middle of your quotation, it is still separated using a comma, but now because the quotation continues on the other side, it is 2 commas, right? These commas are telling you that this is the main sentence. This stuff is extra information. Okay, so that's basic direct quotations. Now we're going to add some more stuff. So far, does this make sense? Any questions so far? We are teaching American English. We are learning American English. So the punctuation always comes inside the quotation mark. Rare cases, no, but in this case, always inside the quotation mark. And we are using double quotation marks. If you have a quotation inside a quotation, you would then the inside set would be single quotation mark. So okay, so in this case, she said, I walked to school today. He or I heard her say this and I asked her to confirm. And then he heard her say it, but is asking me if he heard correctly. Maybe he misheard. We don't know. Okay, you know what? We should give them names. Okay, so A says, I walked to school today. B heard A say this. C also heard A say this, but C can't believe that this is true. So C is asking B, wait, did she really say this? So C is confirming whether this quotation is correct. This is a quotation inside a quotation, so we have changed this to single quotation marks. You will also notice that this question mark is outside of the first quotation because the original quotation does not have a question. The original quotation is not a question, so the question mark does not belong inside with this quotation. It is, in fact, what C is asking, not what A said. So whether a question mark or an exclamation point goes inside or outside depends on the logic. But for American grammar, the period or the comma always goes inside. So question marks, exclamation points, other weird stuff like semicolons, hyphens, or em dashes, those depend on logic. But periods always go inside. Periods and commas always go inside. You will also notice that there are many choices for speech tags. The common one is say or said. Questions are asked. But there are, earlier we used shouted. There are many choices for speech and question tags. The only standard is you have to be able to say something while you are doing the action. So confirming something is a kind of talking, so that's fine. But you cannot, for example, use like he laughed. You can't, if you're laughing, you're not talking. So it's not a speech tag. This is a common one that people will use, but you technically can't, it doesn't work. But you can also use things like if you're singing, you can say like she sang. That's also a good speech tag if the person is singing. You have to think about whether the action you can actually say or ask or sing something when you are doing that action. Okay, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about conversation. All right, let's talk about conversation. So I have here a very simple, kind of silly conversation. I got a Christmas present last night, Adam announced. But it's April, Brian noted, confused. Yeah, my dad forgot last year, so he was making it up to me, Adam explained. Brian asked, so what did he give you? A ticket to the Eras Tour, Adam exclaimed. You idiot, Cheryl interjected. That ended over a year ago. So, one first thing to notice, every time a different person talks, it's a new paragraph. This is the most common way of presenting conversations. When writing, usually we change paragraphs when the subject changes, when we're talking about a different thing. So every time someone says something, it's a slightly change of topic. It's a slight change of topic. New information, changing the main focus a little bit. So every time someone says something, every time somebody else says something, it's a new paragraph. The second thing to notice is look at the last line. You idiot, Cheryl interjected. That ended over a year ago. So previously we saw that if you put a speech tag into the middle of the quotation, there is a comma on both sides. But in this case, the second comma is a period because this is not one quotation, this is two quotations, two different complete sentences. You idiot is Cheryl is calling Adam an idiot. And then that ended over a year ago. That is the subject. Ended is the verb. Over a year ago is the time. It is a complete sentence. These are two complete sentences. So Cheryl is not actually, the speech tag is not in the middle of a quotation. It is between two quotations. And we know that the second sentence is still said by Cheryl because there is no new paragraph. It is the same paragraph, it is the same line, it is the same speaker, same person talking. Now, the last thing I'm going to say today is, look at this. Do we really need to say that Adam is explaining this? If we read his quotation, don't we already know that he's explaining? When we read this quotation, don't we already know that it's a question? Do we really have to say that he asked? Even here, we have the exclamation point. So we don't really need to say that he exclaimed, right? All of these speech tags are extra information. So in a conversation, if you know which people are talking, you don't need a speech tag. The first line is Adam. The second line is Brian. The third line, no speech tag. So it must be Adam. It's a new line, so it's not Brian. And there's nobody else so far. So it has to be Adam. And then after that, it's a different person. So it has to be Brian. This one has to be Adam. Only when you have a new person, do you then have to add the speech tag to tell the reader who this person is. Now that we have three people, every time somebody says something, you have to have a speech tag so that the reader does not get confused. But if you only have two people and the reader knows which two people, then you don't need a speech tag. In other words, if you see this kind of thing, you should be able to figure out who is talking to whom. I said this was the last thing. I lied. There's one more thing. So we said that every time someone else says something new, it's a new paragraph. There are some cases where you need a new paragraph, but it's the same person talking. For example, if your quotation is like in your story, the professor is giving a long lecture, and you want to present 2 paragraphs of this lecture. In order to avoid this problem, right? Because every time you change a line, it looks like somebody new is talking. In order to avoid this problem, in order to let the reader know that it's a new paragraph inside the same quotation, the new paragraph, or sorry, the first paragraph does not have an ending quotation mark. So like, if this is a long paragraph, and this is also a long paragraph, and this first paragraph does not have an ending quotation mark, that means that the new paragraph is still the same person talking. You just need a new paragraph inside the quotation. Does that make sense? Okay, we need a longer example. Like this. So somebody is saying a lot of stuff, and then it's a new paragraph, and they still keep saying a lot of stuff, but there's no ending quotation mark here. You know that it's still the same professor talking. Okay? Okay, so that's everything today. Do you have any questions about anything at all? Yes. So you're saying, why is this not a period? Right. So if you look at it this way, this speech tag is regarding this quotation. So this part of the sentence is exactly the same as this. Quotation, comma, speech tag. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, if not, remember when I said that this week is like a compression of 3 weeks? We're doing 3 weeks in 1 week. Your homework is to please finish up to page 25. Starting on page 9, all the way to page 25. I am so sorry. So the practice about direct questions begins on page 9. And then the practice about negation begins on page 17. And then the practice about direct quotations begins on page 19, all the way to 25. And then the homework for next week will be to finish the handout. Or the week after next week, sorry. So this week up to page 25, and the following week, finish everything. And then the week after that is the midterm exam. It's all happening so fast. Okay, so let's start doing the homework now. Page 9. This set of questions is very helpfully guiding you to build English questions. So let's look at the example question number 1. The answer is yes, I did. And the full sentence is I heard the news yesterday. And you have to figure out what the original question was. So the answer is yes, I did. So it's asking about the action. And it's a yes or no question. So you're asking about the action to hear, and it's yes or no. So I heard becomes did you hear? There is no question word in front, who, what, when, where, why, which, how. There's none of that here. So you begin with did, the auxiliary verb or the helping verb, and then the rest of the sentence, subject, verb, everything else. If you do have a question word, so for example, number 2, the answer is yesterday. So the question is asking about time. Time is a content word, so it should begin with when. And then you finish the rest of the question. So as long as you know how to form questions, these should not be too hard. If your question does not fit these spaces, then something is wrong with your answer. Okay, so it's 10 questions. I'll give you 3 minutes.顾里红，顾里红来了吗？彭一婷，彭一婷。 左比红，林子瑜，邱宇恩，吴鹏玉，杨杰宇。这些同学是准备要检修就对了。李念善 ，Yes. Number 3, please. What is the correct question? Good. Is Eric reading today's paper? The original sentence is Eric is reading. The word is, in this case, is a helping verb. So it's the first word in the verb phrase, right? There are 2 words here, right? Is reading. So you move the first one to the front. Is Eric reading today's paper? Good. Number 4, Liu Jie. Liu Jie? No? Cai Jingxuan. Number 4, please. What is Eric reading? Good. The question is asking about the thing. So the first word is the content word what, and then it's a question, so you move the helping verb to the front. What is Eric reading? Good job. Next one, Chen Guanyao. Number 5, please. Okay, so it's a yes or no question. So it begins with the helping verb. Did. And well, you or, well, yeah, it should be you, right? Asking B. So did you, and then found is now the simple find. The past tense has moved to the did in front. So did you find, and then you, my becomes you, your wallet. Good. And then the first one is blank. Yeah. So blank, did you find your wallet? Good job. Number 6, Jiang Jing. Number 6, please. Good. Number 6, it's asking about a place, location. So it's where. And then again, you have to add the do, past tense, did. Where did you find your wallet? Good. Number 7, Zhang Anqi. No? Wang Boxuan. Lai Yuchen. Number 7, please. Good. Because, so it's asking about the reason, why. And then you add the extra verb, do, it's present tense, he enjoys. So it should be why does. And then the rest of the sentence, Mr. Li, walk is no longer present tense, it is simple. Why does Mr. Li walk to work? Almost had it. You want to try another one? Number 8? One more time? Good, okay, yes or no question. So you have to add a new word. Do, present tense, does. So blank, does Mr. Li walk to work? Good job. Saya. Is Saya here? No. Han. Yes. Number 9, please. Okay, so it's a yes or no question. The helping verb is will. Move that to the front. Blank will Ms. Cook return and then to her office at 1 o'clock. Good job. Number 10, is it Nicholas? Yeah. One more time. Okay, so that is technically correct, but we want to try to use a question word. Instead of what time, we can use when. When, and then move the will to the front. Will Ms. Cook return to her office? Liu Yuan. Number 11, please. Good. So the helping verb is. Move that to the front. It's a yes or no question. So we start with the helping verb is the orange juice, and we don't have a main verb in the refrigerator. Good job. Yes. What time? Yes. When equals what time? Just in this case, each blank is one word. Yeah. So the earlier answer was correct, just not for this question. Okay, and then finally, number 12, Lin Xuanyu. 张一奇. Number 12, please. Good. So begin, it's asking about location. So where? Then we move the helping verb to the front, is, and then the rest of the sentence, the orange juice. Where is the orange juice? Good. All right, next page, page 10. Same thing, but now less help. You have to form the whole sentence yourself. So since we are no longer limiting one word per blank, Nicholas, then as you see from the first question, you can use what time if you want. So this is 9 questions. I'll give you 4 minutes. 胡锦和、陶凯丽、王丽婷。Hey, number 2, please. Okay, why do you need to see the principal? Good. Asking about a question, it's asking about a reason. So it's why. And then it is I need to, so it's present tense, do. And then the rest of the sentence, you need to see the principal. Good job. Number 3, please. Okay, good. Time, when, and then present tense, does Rachel start her new job? Good. Fu Sen, Li Yuchen, Huang Zitian. Number 4, please. Okay, did you say when do you leave home for work? Okay. So this is in present tense. I usually leave. So it should be when do you leave home for work? Some people might say, shouldn't the question be around when? But no, because the answer includes the word around. If the answer is only 6 and this part has the word around, then it would be around when. But this word around, this information comes in the answer. When you ask the question, you don't know this information. So the correct answer is when do you usually leave home for work? Okay, okay. Yang Ziyun, number 5, please. Why didn't you get to the meeting? It's asking about reason. It's in the past. Good. Why didn't you get to the meeting? Other possible answers include come to the meeting, go to the meeting. But the information we have is get, so get is the best answer. Yes. Yeah, didn't and did not, both are fine. In this case, it is a dialogue, so didn't is also okay. Right, they're talking. Cai Ru. Number 6, please. 蔡如在吗？没有哦。OK OK。刘玉泽 Ray. Number 6, please. Okay, so it's asking a place where, and then move the can to the front. Can you or I think both are fine. Where can I buy? Where can you buy razor blades? Good. I say you and I are both fine because it could be one person asking for themselves. It could also be asking where can people buy razor blades. The word you sometimes has the meaning of an impersonal you, which just means people. So either one is fine. Huang Xiangcun. Number 7, please. When you leaving for home? I feel like we're missing something. Yes, when are you leaving for home? Next Saturday, it's asking for the time. When and then you need to add a new, well, not add, right? You already have a helping verb here, am, right? So you move the am to the front. Are you, right? Are you leaving for home? Okay, good. Do you want to try another one, number 8? No, okay. 陈彦成, number 8, please. Okay, so in Germany is asking for a place where, add a new helping verb, did, I becomes you study Chinese. Good. Where did you study Chinese? Now, some of you might be thinking, why would, oh yeah, that's the next question, right? Why not China? So next, blank, 林佳宇. Yeah. Why did you study Chinese in Germany, right? Good. Next one, Liu Yiting. Liu Yiting. No. 梁洛溪. 曾安琪. 曾安琪我是教过. Oh, no? Okay, 曾安琪. This one. 我刚刚说安琪，哦，不是你。OK。王之云。Nicholas, you want to give this one a go? This one. One more time. Why did you go to China? I think the original sentence is he didn't, right? So why didn't you go to China? So yeah, asking for a reason, it's a why, but it's a negation, didn't. And then you go to China to study Chinese. Okay, so some of you might be thinking, okay, fine, not China, but why not like Singapore, right? Why not somewhere near China? Why Germany? The thing about Chinese is that it is a living language that you can learn by going to the place. It is also an academic language that you can learn to study like ancient Chinese texts. The second kind of Chinese is called sinology, 汉学. And Germany has a long tradition of sinology. So that's one reason why somebody might go to Germany to study Chinese, if they're focused on academic Chinese. 黄英佳. Number 9, please. Good. Next month is asking for a question. When, new word, do, I becomes you, expect to finish this project? When do you expect to finish this project? Good. Number 10, 潘欣贤. No. 傅彦树. Number 10, please. Good. To Mars is a place where, move the will to the front, will the spaceship go? Okay, that's all the time we have today. Please, for homework, finish from page 11 to page 25.